Minister Jolie, do you think the steel and aluminum tariffs will be in place forever?
You don't know, I don't know. 3-year loans. The loans will be between $2 million up to $50 million. The first year will be 0 interest rate, and afterwards, year second and third will be very low rates.
All this does is put these companies in death row. Manufacturers from Windsor just told Parliament that they're running out of time. They can't plan their business, and they need a deal with the United States above all else. In a press conference yesterday, the government laid out a plan that doesn't even mention a deal. Instead, it asked these same companies to adapt to a reality that they say simply they can't operate in. And they also asked these companies to take on debt that will only accelerate the prospect of their collapse. Let's take a look.
And I'm proud to announce $1 billion through the BDC to support the steel, aluminum, and copper sector. Here's how we will be organizing our support. So the BDC will be offering favorable terms for 3-year loans. The loans will be between $2 million up to $50 million. The first year will be 0 interest rate, and afterwards, year second and third will be very low rates. There will be no repayment for the entire 3 years, only actually interest to be paid on these loans. And at the end of the 3-year, that's when repayment will be asked. So let me be clear, this is not the only response to current pressures. It's part of a broader industrial strategy we have.
All right, so let's unpack this a little bit. So number one, not to take anything away from Eastern Ontario, Hamilton, or Sault Ste. Marie, but notice that Minister Jolie completely left out Windsor. Why? Because that's where a bunch of the Conservative MPs are. And also, those are the people that actually brought this forward with such force to demand an emergency debate and demand emergency meetings within the Indu Committee so they could actually get some of these business owners up to Ottawa to lay out exactly how important and how critical this is. Meanwhile, and we're not going to show this part because it's just infuriating, Jolie goes around and thanks all of the Liberals for doing all of this work. So that's just beside the point. But what I can tell you is, from a partisan perspective, the Conservative MPs, they're not concerned about credit. They're concerned about getting something done. And I applaud them for that. So that's the first part. Second part, what is this? Well, so what the government wants to do is they have an agency that is responsible for handing out loans. And they want to allocate up to $1 billion for the BDC to hand out loans. Now, the way this works is that these loans, they will be spread out over many companies. So a company that needs to actually pay a tariff, what they'll do is they will go through some process where they apply for this loan. Either they'll apply for it up front or ad hoc. That process isn't clear, but they'll get money essentially from the government to pay the tariff, and that way they're not charging the customer. Now these loans, government says it'll be interest free for the first year, and then on the second and third years, then you'll pay a reasonable amount of interest. They don't actually say what that reasonable amount of interest is, but they say this is what it is. Is this a good thing? No. What this will do in the short term is this will allow the companies to continue operating. That's fine. But here's the big but. The testimony that we heard in Parliament in our previous videos was that these companies cannot absorb these tariffs, right? That's the whole reason for this loan bailout in the first place. But if you think about it this way, so they're paying, maybe a 15% tariff on the total value of the product that they're sending down into the United States. And they're only making between, say, 5 and 9% on every product that they sell. So this 15% tariff, they can't absorb, right? You're literally going to be operating a loss every single time you send something over the border, which is most of their business. So now the government is asking them, okay, so you're going to take a loan in order to pay these tariffs, and you don't pay them now, you'll pay them 3 years from now. And you'll be paying interest on top of that. So how does this help? Right? Let's just say the government is saying, okay, well, you're going to have a 1% interest on these loans. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, even if there is no interest, but there is interest. So in 3 years, they now have to pay all the money that they borrowed, which is the equivalent to them paying the tariffs in the first place. How does this help these companies that can't afford to pay the tariffs right now and are operating at a loss? They're either operating at a loss now, or based on these loans, you're asking them to operate at a loss later. This doesn't help. All this does is put these companies in death row on palliative care. And what this will also do is for the older business owners, and it's hard to blame them, they're going to look at this and say, okay, so I'm getting old. Do I worry about the complications of this loan system? And then I'm going to have to look at 3 years down the road, I'm going to owe even more money. What's the point? Maybe that offer from Donald Trump to move to the United States is looking a little bit better. Or do I worry about the hassle and just close up shop? Because if I close up shop, I'm not going to owe the government any of this interest that I'm going to have to owe later. And here's the other thing, folks. When it comes to these loans, this actually doesn't go on the books the way you would think. It doesn't get classified as a government expense, so they actually don't have to vote on it. Loans are classified as assets because that money is supposed to come back. So the fact that the government is issuing this as a loan is pretty ridiculous, because it's not the business's fault that the government put them in this position in the first place. Number two, the government is going to be making money off of these businesses that are in this financial struggle. What are you thinking? Now, let's now move to the strategy, because that's the other thing that these business owners were saying. We need a plan. There is no plan. What is going on? And by the way, we need a deal with the United States. I give you the plan.
Short term, our goal is to provide liquidities to companies in order for them to keep their workers. Medium term, what we're trying to do is really to help businesses adapt, pivot, try to get into new markets. And long term, what we're doing is we're building Canada strong. So we're really working on having a domestic demand that will be very helpful for these different businesses in these sectors. And at the same time, we're developing new markets. That's exactly why the Prime Minister is in Armenia today, making sure that we can also help businesses export to new markets.
Notice what isn't in that strategy, folks. Negotiating a deal with the United States. It's not there. Now, Jolie just spent a little bit thanking all of the Liberal MPs, and again, we're not going to show you that. And she said, well, you know, we've been listening to businesses. Really? Who have you been listening to? Because you didn't listen to this.
Just very quickly say that if we're looking at diversifying into other markets, how can that, do you feel optimistic that there is an opportunity to also do that at this time?
Not a chance.
To diversify into other, to sell to other markets?
Yeah, non-US. And
To sell for us outside of the U.S., to sell the tool to China, impossible. To sell a tool to India, impossible. To sell a tool to Europe, highly unlikely. Our world is U.S. integrated. This is what Kuzma's done. This is what we've built our business on.
This is the message that the Liberals are trying to sell Canadians. Oh, we'll just diversify. I remember Mark Carney saying to Pierre Poilievre in committee, let me explain to you how the world works. And Mark Carney had said this during the campaign multiple times. Pierre Poilievre doesn't understand how the world works. Well, Mr. Carney, clearly you and your government and your Liberals don't understand how the Canada, U.S., North American supply chain works. Maybe if you had actually spent more time in Canada instead of burning through jet fuel, go climate change, and burning through Canadian taxpayer money, flying all over the world, even if you're invited to some dignitary's birthday party, you would actually learn about the North American supply chain. And there are hundreds of businesses who their only customer is the United States. Their whole business model has been built on the United States. United States customers have built their business model on Canadian businesses. So no, you can't just say, well, just sell to other markets. They're saying, no. Hello? The markets that you want us to sell to, that's where our competitors are. And this is leaving an open door for Mexico and China to step in, and they'll never get that market back. So, right, your major pillar of this, number 2, diversify, that's not going to happen. And your third pillar, build Canada strong. Wow. What happened to solutions and not slogans, Liberals? Because a slogan isn't an economy. Now, Ms. Jolie was also asked, what are you guys even doing about the United States? Like, what is going to happen with this? Is this a permanent tariff, or is this going to get negotiated away? What's going on?
Hi, Mike Couture from
Hi,
CTV
Mike.
News. Minister Jolie, do you think the steel and aluminum tariffs will be in place forever?
To your question, Mike, you don't know, I don't know. So this is not up to us to answer that question, because these decisions will be taken south of our border. Meanwhile, we just don't sit idle waiting for things to happen. We act. And that's why today we announced $1.5 billion to support our steel, aluminum, and copper workers.
What? What? One of the things that the businesses wanted was certainty. The natural question is this going to be a permanent tariff, or is this going to be taken off? We don't know. That's up to Donald Trump. Why don't you know this? This is something that you're supposed to know. And the good thing is that Mike Couture, who, you see him on Power Play sometimes, he wasn't the only one to ask this question, because when Evan Solomon actually left this press conference and went to CTV, Mike's colleague, Vashi Kapelos, asked him the exact same question.
Just one final question on sort of the trying to create that resilience. The minister today was asked by my colleague, Michael Couture, is this a sign that these tariffs are permanent? She said, I don't know, you don't know. Yeah. With all due respect to your government, shouldn't you know? You're on the other side of the negotiating table.
Let's just be candid. We don't know what's going to happen in the White House. And we talk to them every single day. Dominic LeBlanc, Ambassador Wiseman, Janet Charest. We have a team. The Prime Minister talks frequently with the President. We are talking to the United States. Let's just remind Canadians. We have the best tariff rate in the world. 85% of our goods are still tariff-free. The 15% steel, aluminum, auto, lumber, we get it. It is a brutal fight, and we are in it. That's what today is all about. But we are protecting 85% of our goods that are still freely traded, and we are negotiating. We cannot predict what's coming out of the White House tomorrow or the next day, and you've seen that here. We can't control what we can control, and number one is to broaden our investment, our customers, but two, we are always going to invest in Canadians, because when this turns, they will be here, they will be ready, and we'll protect those jobs.
Should it be worrying to Canadians that though you say you're having all these conversations, nothing formal is happening right now, and the Minister of Industry says, I don't know about whether or not these tariffs are permanent? Like, that is it all up to the states? Is everything all up to them?
Look, there's a fair negotiation, and we are going to go into a negotiation with the United States. We're having constructive dialogue. Again, we are starting from the most favorable position, not to sugarcoat the 15% that's hit, because that's real. But in the aggregate, the main thing's the main thing. We got to do that.
It's hard to listen to him. So a couple things there. Shouldn't you know? Well, you know, we're talking to them. The Prime Minister is in frequent contact with Donald Trump. Well, not according to the Prime Minister, Mr. Solomon. So either you're lying or he's lying, right? So that's the first part. The second part is that you say that, well, you know, we're negotiating. We're going to negotiate. Okay, well, are you negotiating? Or will you be negotiating in the future? Because those are two different things that you said in the span of 5 seconds. Clarity is kind of important here. Certainty is important here. We heard that from virtually every single business owner that actually testified in Parliament. So that's the second piece. The last part is that he said, well, you know, we have to understand, we have the best deal. We have the best deal. Not to discount the 15%. You know, that's an issue to be sure. But, you know, we're protecting 85%. You're protecting 85%. I want to remind everybody of how serious this is. This is a piece of testimony that we didn't show in some previous videos. But it's very important that people understand just how serious this only 15% actually is.
I gave you the examples of 2 molds within 6 months. One was $35,000 US on tariff, and the second was $135,000. I have no idea what the third one will be. So how am I supposed to plan my business going forward? And if a customer has to pay this, obviously there is a completely different set of negotiation. So that uncertainty for our businesses is crucial, because we can't provide a quotation for a project not knowing by the time it's finished what additional costs are going to be there. And one thing that I want to let everybody here know, this is not isolated to automotive. We're talking about the entire manufacturing industry in Canada. My company specializes in molds that makes these caps or other food packaging products that everybody uses and takes it for granted how it's made. And that's how it should be. Because we work on the efficiency. Our customers love our product. The molds that we make produces plastic products that are used in US, Canada, and Mexico. It's all interconnected. It's been like that for the last decades. And this tariff now, the lack of negotiation, the lack of clarity for businesses, it's detrimental to our businesses.
And again, like, I want to get to some potential recommendations, some low-hanging fruit, things that we could get to. But maybe I'll switch to Mr. Yeah, sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I was in Washington last week, and one thing that I learned there, this is from U.S. customers and U.S. counterparts in Washington telling us that U.S. looks at Canada when it comes to aerospace and defense as a vital partner, and we have to leverage that. And I had it written here that the manufacturing ecosystem, if one sector, whether it's automotive or mold making, if it goes down, it will impact the entire manufacturing sector. It will impact the capability of companies who are specializing in aerospace or defense. We do have ways to negotiate, but we have to show up to the table. And we have to tell the US, you are our biggest customer, we're not going anywhere. We're here to make a deal. That is my recommendation on behalf of my company and Canadian Mold Making Association, that it is our government who needs to go there and not leave until we have a deal, whatever that deal is. We need certainty.
Yeah.
Dragging this along for months and years and just talk is not going to save manufacturing industry. That's the sad reality.
This is the problem. 80% of the mold, tool, and die industry is in the Windsor area. Doesn't discount all of the other people that are working in this industry all over Canada. But they're all in the same boat. And what they're saying is, listen, get a deal. Get down there and don't come back until you have a deal. So this proposal that the Liberals have put forward, it shows a complete lack of understanding or lack of any sort of concern whatsoever for these industries. And when this industry goes down, it affects the entire manufacturing center in Canada. So I think the other message that is to take away from the Liberal press conference is something that has been kind of surfacing over the last 6 months and will not surprise people. The Liberals only care about people that are in Liberal ridings. So they're not concerned about your neighbor across the road. So if you voted Liberal, understand that they only care about Liberal voters. They only care that you made Mark Carney Prime Minister. What do you say to a Prime Minister that doesn't give a damn about your neighbor in the next riding just because they voted differently? It's disgusting. But even more than that, we have a Prime Minister that cares more about jetting around the world, pretending to be this world leader, rather than fixing the country that he was actually elected on. He's probably been out of Canada more than he's actually been in Canada since he was elected. Would love to see the stat on that. But this solution is not a solution. All it is the beginning of the funeral for the mold, tool, and die industry. And right now, all I see them doing is measuring the coffin. And that may sound over dramatic, but look at what these people have said. They have 3 to 6 months. They need certainty. What this loan program does is that it allows them to continue to pay the tariffs, but they still owe that money on the tariffs. So they're not paying today, they're not paying tomorrow, but they're going to have to pay it back in 3 years' time. That's like saying double the mortgage on your house. You don't have to pay anything now. You pay it later. Remember those furniture deals? Pay no interest. Don't pay anything for 6 months. Well, you're not getting a free couch. You're still going to have to pay the whole thing. And the only thing that those offers serve to do is to get people who can't afford that couch to buy it in the first place. These businesses can't afford the tariffs today. Why do you think they're going to be able to afford the tariffs tomorrow?